All right. Welcome everybody to both those here with us and those joining us online. My name is Byron Sanders. I am very privileged to be up here for this conversation. I'm the trustee for Dallas Independent School District, District 5. We are in the historic and legendary John Lewis but somebody got to bend it. You're looking at some benders up here. So we're going to get into the conversation about how Dallas ISD, in its microcosm of the great United States of America, how it itself has been on a journey. Desegregation didn't just magically happen in this city. It didn't magically happen anywhere else. And would you know that a Supreme Court ruling in 1954 wasn't enough to make everybody just get in line? Sure, we had the court order, but we didn't have boots on the ground mandate. People had to make that happen. Mm-hmm. Social justice warriors had to make that happen. And we're going to be talking to a few of them here today. I'm grateful for us to dive into this conversation. And so I was thinking about it. I was going to introduce everybody with, like this long bio. Google the names that I'm about to talk to you about. I promise you, you're going to find a whole lot there. But I wanted to talk about them each from the perspective of a kid who grew up in this city. I grew up in Southern Dallas, DeSoto, Oak Cliff, and I knew all of these names before I ever met them. Shirley Ison Newsom is the legend in education, not only in Dallas, but throughout the country. We're going to hear about some of her pioneering, but I'll tell you this, my mother, who's also here tonight, Molly Sanders, worked in the district for a long time. She worked under her, she worked in her areas, and so many people are on the tree of Shirley Ison Newsom's leadership. She got a lot of daughters and sons out here who have done some amazing work down the line, and you're going to hear why. Reverend Peter Johnson, he was one of the first persons I called when I got elected and we were about to open this school. Why? Because this brother here walked with Martin Luther King. Matter of fact, has been dispatched by him a couple of times to come to places. Matter of fact, that's how he ended up in Dallas in the first place. But this school, Social Justice Academy, named after John Lewis, was really important because this brother not only walked with him, they shared cells together. Mm-hmm. He told me about stories of them rolling dice, passing the time as they were walking for justice and facing the front lines of all those people who would stop it. Thank you, Reverend Johnson, for being here with us tonight as well. Renee Martinez, hermano, my man. Renee has gotten into a lot of trouble because of me, and I've gotten into a little bit of trouble because of him, and we do it together.
Good trouble.
That's that good trouble, right?
Yeah, good trouble.
Renee has been a mentor of mine for a long time, LULAC leader. What's so interesting is he walked the walk of being a young leader in justice, and he never forgot the young people. He himself has got a lot of mentors, a lot of mentees out here, and I consider myself one of them. Even now, Renee is in our schools. You will find him in our schools, helping people know about their responsibility to vote as soon as they turn 18. This man here is a legend, and we are grateful that he's here. He's going to talk about some of the history that he was dead center in the middle of in making Dallas ISD a more equitable place to be. And then we have Hector Flores. Again, a man who has loomed large. I read about him before I ever met him. And this brother here is a national legend because he's been the national leader of LULAC. He has led on the front lines of immigration, civil rights, workers' rights, and we are grateful to have him in our presence as well. Thank you so much for being up here. Everybody I'm not gonna say all their ages because that's not what I'm here to do. But I just listened to them, and we have a collective tome of wisdom that we're gonna just be even scratching the surface of tonight. So without any further ado, we're gonna go ahead and get right into it. First question is actually gonna come to you, Renee. So you were somebody who lived and organized through DSEG. And I want you to talk about the Tri-Ethnic Committee on which you served. But just for a little bit of context, our first actions in desegregation, now keep in mind, Brown versus Board was in the mid-50s, as we just said, right? We didn't have 18 black first graders go to an all-white school in Dallas ISD until 1961. And that was part of a thing that we called the stair-step plan at the time. And that was under Superintendent W.T. White.
W.T. White.
W.T. White. So there was a time between when the Supreme Court made their ruling and when we did our first action, and even then, it was very much dipping our toe in the water. Talk a little bit about that. Talk about what you saw at the time, and then how that eventually led to the Tri-Ethnic Committee and why that was even necessary. We'd love to hear what you think.
Well, I grew up in Dallas, and what used to be called Little Mexico. There near the Crescent Hotel, Cedar Springs and Cole. So I grew up there, went to William B. Travis Elementary down the street from my house. It wasn't an academy at that time. It was an all-Mexican school. And went to Cumberland Hill when Travis was burned down by some of my buddies. And no, that's a true story.
Yeah.
And then later, my mother was a PTA president, and she really took action and had the new Travis built and confronted W.T. White to have the new Travis built. So I went back to Travis, new Travis, and then went to Spence, graduated from North Dallas High School. And I guess my first experience in terms of DSEG, I never went to school with an African American while I was at DISD. The first time that I went to school with an African American was at SMU, and that was Jerry Levias. Jerry was an All-American football player, and he and I became very good friends. To this date, we still talk to each other weekly. 1966, you may remember this, Peter, Dr. King visited Dallas. And I was a sophomore at SMU. Jerry was a sophomore, and we went to hear him speak at McFarland Auditorium. And there was only myself and Jerry as the only minorities in the auditorium. And before we knew it, in walks this young white lady with 15 African-American students from Bishop College. And that white lady was my sister-in-law, Kay Curry Martinez, who was teaching at Bishop. And she'd asked the president of Bishop College permission to come take her students there, and he did not give her permission to go. And so she did it on her own. So we sat there. I was in a dream world. I told Jerry, let's go sit in the very front so we can see him and hear him. And I remember Jerry said, he used to call me Renee. He said, Renee, I'm not going to sit in the front because if those KKKers outside come get us, I'm going to want to run. And I said, I'm going to sit in the back. I said, well, Jerry, you run the 109.3. you can run faster than I can. So let's sit in the front. So we sat in the front. So we heard the speech. Again, it was like I was in a dream cloud. And right after the speech, Dr. King's assistant came up to Jerry and said, we want to talk to you. And he went and spoke to Jerry for about 10 minutes. We then walked out of the building, and I said, what did Dr. King say to you? This is two 19-year-olds at SMU. He said, he told me that he had already heard about my football escapades. And for me to continue playing, let my legs, my hands, my athletic ability speak for itself, turn the cheek, if I'm called names, score touchdowns. And so Jerry did that. Jerry did that for 3 years, became an All-American. We played basketball together, we became friends, and that was my first experience with being exposed to the African-American culture in terms of being around Jerry, listening to Dr. King. And SMU created that impetus in me to get more involved. When I was a senior at SMU, I had a couple of, and Shirley, you probably remember them, Barbara Reagan, who was the head of the economics department, Betty Maynard, the head of the sociology department. They were my mentors. Conchita Wynn, the head of the Spanish department. And they had a group of us that said, you got to do some research on how the school system is dealing with Hispanic kids. And so we put together some figures and data, and there was about 4 of us. One young man was the quarterback of the team. His name was Inez Perez from Corpus Christi. And he was finishing his degree. And so we finished all this information. We presented it to the professors, and they said, well, what are you going to do with it? And I said, I don't know. You asked us to put it together. I said, no, you got to take it to the school board. And this was 1969, 1970. And I said, well, who's going to take it? He said, you are. So I took this presentation to the school board, 1970. Nola Ness was the superintendent. And all we were asking was hire more bilingual teachers. We only had about 6.
In the whole district?
In the whole district.
Okay.
African-American teachers were segregated in predominantly African-American schools. African-American administrators, same way. Shirley can talk about that. But there weren't any Hispanic administrators, very few teachers. And so one of my mentors at SMU, Dr. Horacio Olivari, you may remember him, Shirley, is a brilliant sociologist. He went with me, and Nola Ness is the incredible man that he was. He was a political, savvy individual. He said, these are tremendous demands. We're going to do it. And so what he did, he's hired Dr. Olivari part-time to recruit teachers, to develop a bilingual program, and to hire more administrators. Half-time at SMU and half-time at DISD, 1970-71. Next thing that happens, TASB suit comes forth, and the school district is sued at that time. And right after that, at that time, Judge Mac Taylor appointed the Triathlon Committee with Zan Holmes and myself.
Yeah. Sam Tasby, we have a school named after him now. We got the trustee in the room, Dan Mishke. Sam Tasby, his name is on a building because it was that trigger that moved us out of the slow your roll. And quite frankly, the blocking of desegregation, and it spurred us into a new world. And so that triethnic committee was pulled together, and when you say triethnic, white, black, Latino.
3 each.
3.
3 each.
There was 3 of us, then
Nine-
expanded to 15.
9 people total.
15.
Yeah. 15, absolutely, is expanded. And what was y'all's charge?
The judge built us into the order. Mac Taylor was an incredible man. He was about 5'3". I happened to be in his office several times. He was appointed by John Kennedy to be federal judge.
Oh, wow.
He was a very impressive individual. And he basically said, I want you to be my eyes and ears with the implementation of this court order. I want you to see how schools are selected, where they're placed. You know, Pinkston had been built on a city dump, okay? If there's gonna be new schools, that they're built on areas where the need is. I want you to monitor what then was called the majority-minority transfer. So we could transfer African American, Hispanic kids where they were the minority to schools that were the majority. I want you to monitor the singleton ratio. Black teachers, we had a ratio of, at that time, 75-25. And so we make sure that there was African American, at least 25% to 30% African American teachers in every school. Now, it was very difficult because there weren't that many, and as many African American teachers, but Nolan Estes did a good job in doing it. There were very few bilingual teachers. That's another story that Hector can tell you on the recruiting. And so transportation, we had to bus kids only through certain grade levels. We didn't bus the kids at the lower grade levels. I remember vividly, school district had to order buses, the yellow buses. And here we are in August, school's about to start. The judge called Zan, myself, to his chambers. Nolan Estes, John Plath Green, the president of the school board, and Dr. Estes says, the buses have not arrived. We placed the order, they haven't arrived. And Judge Taylor, looking out of his window down on Commerce, he said, what are all those buses that are parked there? And at that time, the city had intervened in the case. And Alex Bickley, the city attorney, said, oh, those are Dallas City Transit buses. He said, well, since you've intervened, why don't we use the Dallas Transit buses until the yellow buses come in? So when school started, the kids started in air-conditioned buses. That was the power of a federal judge, which I learned. It was incredible.
Wow.
And then we monitored schools. Kathleen Gillum, trustee, and I went to Skyline because there was a lot of fights in the schools. Skyline, Bryan Adams, Woodrow, and some kids walked out of Skyline. Black kids that were going to Skyline were given one-way tickets to Africa in their lockers. Hispanic kids in the cafeteria had rats released under their tables. And Ms. Gillum and I went to talk to the kids, and we advised them. We said, you know, you can't take that. It'd be nice if you all just go ahead and walk out. And they did. We had about 200 kids walk out and made front page. So we were visiting schools, hearing from kids, hearing from parents, and writing monthly reports to the judge.
So funny how history repeats itself. We are on the back end of a whole string of walkouts last week with young people using their voice and using their feet, which was all youth-led, youth-originating, and everything else. Our job was to keep them safe, which we did, but those were young people's choices and decisions. You know, that kind of brings me to you, Ms. Newsom.
Yes, sir.
And so it's kind of funny. You're such a Dallas legend. I assumed you were born here. I assumed you were born here, you got raised here, and everything else. When did you even get to Dallas?
I got to Dallas in 1971, right after.
The year of the court order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Mac Taylor did his order. The school board, with the leadership of Nolan Estes, asked for a study of instruction to look at what the efficacy was of instruction. Because what had happened, they were busing the little black kids out. You know, busing was only one way, so we need to be clear about that.
That's right.
They were busing these black children to North Dallas schools, and when the buses would pull in, they would pull into the back of the school. They took the kids into the cafeteria, got the school started for everybody else, and then sort of, kind of let them have a little education. That's what led to the learning centers. The Black Coalition to Maximize Education.
Yeah, I needed to sit back.
Oh, okay, it was you, not
That was
me,
me.
okay. The Black Coalition to Maximize Education filed a suit against the district because of what was happening to those children.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, that's when the magnet schools, which was principally led and developed by Yvonne Ewell, and the learning centers, which principally was developed by trustee Kathleen Gilliam and her little crew, came into being. Because if we're not going to send our children out north to be brutalized. And that's when Dallas became the first city in the country to have a programmatic deseg order, not a busing order, but a programmatic order.
Talk to me. Yeah, help us understand what's the difference between that for all of our listeners.
Okay, a busing order is just that. You throw the kids on the bus and you send them on out there, and whatever's out there is what they get. A programmatic order is one that looks at what the needs of kids are, and you structure specific programs to help them to grow. And that's what the centers were intended to do, and that's what the magnet programs were intended to do. To this day, Dallas's magnet programs are number one. If they're ranked in the country, they're number one in the country. And so that they have stayed the test of time for being very good. Learning centers were for elementary and middle schools. The first learning centers were in South Dallas, Madison, Lincoln feeder patterns, and that included Pearl C. Anderson, and Pearl C. was the only middle school because they opened up
That was the feeder.
They opened up day later as a middle school. And then about 3 years after that, we went back to court. The coalition went to court to fight for the West Dallas schools, and that's when the learning centers in the West Dallas opened up. I was privileged to be part of that team that developed both the magnet schools and the learning centers. And then when I became area superintendent, I was over all of the learning centers.
Yeah.
And 1 year I was even over, 2 years I was over all the magnet schools.
I want you to talk more about the learning center model. Why did you design it the way you did?
Well, the group designed it.
The group.
Yes, I can.
You didn't take all of it.
I'm not
You
going to
didn't
take
all the credit.
I'll take a little. But I'm not
why
gonna
did
take it
y'all?
Well,
Why did you all pioneer it the way you did?
we pioneered it because we were looking at what the needs of children were. And what we do know is that kids who are engaged in a meaningful activities outside of school, which is why we had the extended school day program, do much better inside the school day. So, and then we also made sure that they had reading teachers who were master reading teachers. In the state of Texas, one can be an elementary school teacher to teach reading with only 3 hours of reading. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do with 3 hours of anything and consider yourself to be masterful. So part of what the learning centers did was pay for teachers to go back to get master's levels in reading and mathematics. We also put on those campuses reading demonstration teachers who would work with teachers to make sure that their growth continued, and math demonstration teachers. We had a very, very strong parent component. We had Saturday schools twice a month for those campuses. We had extended day. Every child was engaged in some activity outside the classroom, chess club, you name it. And so it's a model that worked very well. When the SEIs, the school effectiveness indices for the district, came out, the top 5 every year was the learning center. Every year, without fail.
And these learning centers, just for context, were in the most impoverished areas of the city.
The highest poverty levels were in South Dallas and West Dallas, and these were the schools that were performing at the highest level.
Yeah, your mic keeps going in and out.
Keeps
No,
going
you're
out?
good.
Okay.
You're good. That's
This is
perfect.
good?
No, this is good. So I want to, let's stay on that for a little bit because, matter of fact, you know, I said my mother's here. She was part of that opening team at Eladio Martinez. We had our South Dallas schools as well. These were defying norms. These were defying expectations. A lot of folks would say that, you know, you're not going to see the kinds of results that we eventually ended up seeing coming out of our learning centers. What was the kind of core behind all that?
Well, I have to be perfectly honest that the learning centers initially started with a excellent blueprint But so goes the principal, so goes the school.
Fair.
And they did not always maximize the resources that they had. And not to pat myself on the back, but the first learning center became a recognized learning center, and then the rest of them became recognized and exemplary was when I took over.
Okay, now.
And part of that has to be picking the principals who are both committed, caring, and competent. Those are the 3 C's.
And one of the things that I also would see out of that, when we talk, and actually is buried in that last C, that confident part, the expectations for a community, regardless of the poverty that's around you, regardless of the challenges that many of their parents had experienced, because it's a cyclical thing, right?
Yeah.
Some of those parents hadn't had the best educational experiences, but still, they were confident that these kids could learn.
Most assuredly. I used to say all the time that what I wanted for the kids in Area 2, that was my area, I wanted for them what I wanted for Brian Newsom, my child. I didn't want anything less from them than I wanted for Brian Newsom.
That's right.
And so principals and teachers who taught in these schools felt the same way. These kids became our kids.
Yeah. You know, what's really interesting is eventually that learning center model started to catch fire. If I'm not mistaken, we had people from all over the country coming to see what was happening in Dallas ISD's learning centers and magnets.
Exactly. At that time, Dallas was probably the #1 urban school district in the country. And it was a model for other urban districts, and they would often come to see what we were doing. And part of that had to do with the personality of Nolan Estes, too. I mean, he was bigger than life. And he was a very principled man who cared about kids, et cetera. I want to tell one quick story about Dallas when Renee was talking. Black teachers in Dallas were not paid the same as white teachers back in the day. And the reason they were not paid the same was that the school board, the rationale they gave was that they went to all black colleges, which were inferior to white colleges. Thelma Richardson, who we have a school name for now, filed a lawsuit against the Dallas Independent School District because she was from Colorado and went to the University of Colorado.
Yeah.
She filed a lawsuit, and that is how black teachers in Dallas got equal pay. And we're not talking that long ago, folk.
Yeah, I was about to say, we're going to get to when we got out of DSEG in just a second. I think the year will shock a lot of folks who
And
don't
this
really
was
know
before
about it.
DSEG.
Exactly.
So for years and years and years and years and years, black teachers were underpaid.
Yeah.
But yet they would give their all to those kids.
Yeah.
Let me add
Go ahead,
on the
Renee.
story about Nolan
Yeah,
Estes.
you're good. He's
I had the privilege of work with him, against him as an antagonist, and then an adversary, and then he was my mentor. He told this story about 2 years ago, before he passed away, to a group of leaders in Dallas. He said that when he was recruited to come to Dallas by Walter Human, who was kind of the author of the magnets, Walter brought him to Dallas because Walter had been a White House fellow, and Nolan was in Washington as the Associate Commissioner of Education. And so we came to Dallas, got selected, and got presented to the school board, Mr. Mirsky. And W.T. White was the superintendent. And this was around 1968, 67. And the renowned first African-American trustee, Emmett Conrad, Dr. Emmett Conrad, invited Nolan to go have dinner that evening with him. And he took him to meet some black doctors in South Dallas. And so Nolan tells a story that he told the board and told Dr. White, I'm going out to dinner tonight with Dr. Conrad. I don't know if you heard this story. Yeah. And with Emmett Conrad. And Dr. White said, what time are you going? He said, around 6:30. And he said, well, where are you going? I said, somewhere near Dr. Conrad's clinic in South Dallas. And Dr. White said, don't take your wife. That was Dallas, 1968.
Yeah, that's right. That's wild.
Yeah.
So, and actually, you hold that mic. Everybody else's mic is working, so y'all gonna be all right. Hector, Mr. Flores, so you are a really wonderful example of a block to the boardroom type of leader. You understand policy, and you've been in the courtroom, and you understand grassroots. You've been in the marches. Talk about how that advocacy intersection, and particularly for our migrant community members, how did that show up in this journey as we were moving to a more just and equitable Dallas ISD?
Well, when I first got here, I have a law enforcement background. And I got hired to come work for Department of Justice. And my brother, Peter Johnson, just told me that I worked the killings that happened in Southern University in Baton Rouge. And that's how I got my, I guess, some of my first experiences on how they do people, particularly in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Of course, I heard and read a lot about in Texas, but not the brutality that's elsewhere. So I didn't know what to expect when I got here. Santos Rodriguez is shot, handcuffed behind his back. Man, we were ready to go back home to San Antonio, my wife and I. My wife was the 16th teacher, bilingual teacher to be hired. Okay. She was going to get a master's and working on curriculum, so they needed bilingual teachers big time. And we basically look at ourselves, do we really want to live here or not after this kid, Santos Rodriguez is shot and handcuffed and all that. But as we met more of the people that were here that wanted to change the system, I just couldn't believe that there had never been any major demonstrations or riots, I mean, because they did not happen here in Dallas. Mm-hmm. Everything was under control. They had it all pretty well controlled. And as I worked, I also did, from justice, they cut our funding like they're doing right now, so I wound up working at the Office for Civil Rights, Department of Education, even though I'm not an educator. Mm-hmm. So I went to work over there, and so I found out, everybody I was working with was either a teacher, a superintendent, or somebody. Mm-hmm. So, man, I hooked onto them and learning more about the business, how this business functions in the schools. Of course, our community was a growing community, and of course, we had a terrible, terrible dropout rate. Even African Americans had a terrible dropout rate. Yeah. And so how do you change that? It takes a lot of time on the efforts of the teachers and the principals and everybody working, from the cafeteria worker to the custodian, working the system. Yeah. We can help you. Stick with it. We're going to change this. A lot of people just drop out. They don't think they're going to go anywhere. But, for our community at the time, I remember the court order 44-44-12, 44% white, 44% African American, 12% Hispanic. Wow. And now we're like 74% Hispanic and about 19% to 20% African American, mm-hmm. maybe 5 or 6% both Anglo and Native American. So it's changed dramatically. I had read some research that had projected that our community would grow because of our birth rate, the in-migration of people from the South and elsewhere. Yeah. So, but how do we handle them? And I'm glad that she brought up the learning centers, because I remember how hard we worked to staff the learning centers. We wanted the best people going there. And I also remember that it seems like we paid them extra if they came in at 7 in the morning and didn't go home till 5 or later. Yeah. And so those teachers were committed to change them. And of course, as more of the changes that occurred, the social changes that occurred, and you're having more kids continuing their education, I can recall one thing that I really admired, that through the court order, the teacher aides could go to community college, and they were underwritten. Mm-hmm. And then we hooked them up to TWU and to A&M and to UTA, and then so not only were they were going into the system.
At SMU?
Yeah, SMU, where my wife went and got her master's there at SMU. So this was a change that was having remarkable results as far as I'm concerned. It's taken a long time, but I think all that work that was done now has put us where we're at. It created that foundation, I think, that we now are enjoying, that our children can go just about any college in this country and even out of country, because the kids are being prepared. And I know that it took a lot of time. When I worked in OCR, I was going to be transferred. Department of Justice recruited me back. And so I worked another 5 years with them. I'm about ready to be transferred to Atlanta, and I said, I don't think they have any tortilla makers over there in Atlanta. I don't know if I want to go over there. So one of my friends that worked in HR, Robert Brown, Dr. Robert Brown actually wanted me to come and work for him. He and Richard Tankerson was another young man. He said, Hector, come on here. We got a job for you. Don't go to Atlanta. I said, well, I don't want to relocate my family, but I need a job. He goes, look, with the kind of time and effort you've put in all these civil rights organizations, and you travel all over the country and all that, I think you could really help us in implementing the court order. I said, well, I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a shot. And my partner became Red James. We went everywhere. There wasn't any historical black college we did not go to, or Hispanic, or HACU, where they have the Hispanic serving institutions. We went everywhere. I mean, he and I were on the road constantly. And we were always, we came up with different ideas where we could utilize the staff that we already had on board, and we would make them ambassadors to go back to their college. And we'd actually pay them some money. Oh yeah, to go in and recruit for us. Yeah. And because, you know, we were two guys. So you implement a court order, that's not going to happen. So we also had to depend on the principals and the resources that they could bring to the table. Because, you know, you have all the fraternities and the sororities. Man, we have to have all the black churches working with us. They would let us do the ads on their little bulletins that go out. I mean, we had everybody participating. And I wanted to say that while we were in there discussing the Dallas Alliance Education Task Force, everything was centered around busing. You know, the Anglos were very adamant that they did not want to be bused anywhere. They wanted balance in all the classrooms. That was not going to happen because of where we live. Yeah. And it was just I just recall that some of the people that were part of our group, we said from the Hispanic point of view that we wanted our kids to stay at home the first 4 years. And after that, then we were ready for them to go elsewhere. And consequently, that's where the learning centers were so important. You had to have, you know, a very capable learning center in the neighborhood. Exactly. The resources to go to that neighborhood, to make sure that they're not going to be sending them to the Catholic preparatory school and elsewhere. They can't afford it anyway. Yeah. So I think those ideas that were hatched and to address the needs that we had gave us a lot of validity on what we could do in this community. And I just marvel at sitting in there with Mr. Charlie Cullum, and we're talking about the facilities that we had in South Dallas and West Dallas that just, I mean, I don't think we could pass any inspection. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he would say, well, why can't we have a bond election? So, well, how much do we need? I said, well, we could start with one at about 100 million. My goodness, I couldn't believe here's a guy supporting that we should have and upgrade all the facilities. And you know what? The rest of the people said, let's do it. And we did do it. Yeah. You know, I mean, these kinds of things that I admire people that love the city and want to change it for the better for everybody.
And Hector is being humble. We went from 18 bilingual teachers. He then went to the school district as a recruiter and hired over 1,000 bilingual teachers over a period of 10 years. So now we have the largest dual language program in the country because of a lot of his efforts in recruiting. And he decided to go south. He went to Mexico, he went to Chile, Argentina, Puerto Rico.
I had to fight the border a little while because they didn't want me to go outside the country because it's politically not acceptable, right?
He recruited, 250 Puerto Rican teachers. And some of those teachers now are principals.
I'll tell you this. I went to a TESOL conference, which is not elementary bilingual because TESOL is at the higher levels. So I went over there to a TESOL conference and I hired 6 people on the spot. Every one of them became a bilingual teacher, got a master's at SMU, and became a principal. Wow. Also for 6. So I knew I was onto something. And not only that, I had in my family, I call them Chicken Ricans because they're Puerto Rican and Mexican. And so I knew a little bit about the culture and history and very capable people. I don't care, just like the Filipinos that I hired, they would pass any test that I put up for them. And I would always, because in Puerto Rico, Spanish is the dominant language. So their English is not at the level that, say, a parent is going to say, this guy's going to teach my son English or daughter? You know, so I had to work on that, you know, let them work on that. And it was not easy to tell them, look, you're excellent on paper. Now you got to work on improving your English. Take a course or two.
Yeah.
Practice that with your buddies there in school. I remember this one lady in particular, her name is Marta Soto Jordan, and her English just, you know, just wasn't there. But when I saw her background, she had 20 years in special ed and as a supervisor. So in my mind, I know the burnout for special ed teachers. They don't last very long. To keep them there not easy. So I reasoned, this lady has got to have something, you know, in her mind, the commitment to be there and be a supervisor. And I said, well, and I would give them an essay. Okay, tell me about discipline. Tell me about your philosophy on education. But I was not only looking at what they were writing, I was looking at their grammar to see if they're going to write a note to a parent. And, you know, you do all these things, okay?
Yeah.
And this lady, I got her hired, and I went to a friend that was from Laredo, this lady, and knew my wife very well because they had gone through the program together. And I said, look, she needs a lot of help in improving her English, but she seems like she's got all the credentials. She said, don't worry, I'll take care of her. So she put her like an assistant, mind you, to help her because the school was almost all Spanish speaking on East Grand. I don't remember the school, but it's on East Grand because I'd go visit to make sure she was making progress. And she said, she started setting up all the meetings with the parents. She was very organized. And I said, Marta, you know, you're going to have to take the test, so you got to be prepared. So, oh, I'm ready. Oh, I'm ready. And I couldn't believe it. Not only did she do elementary, bilingual elementary, she did mid-level. Believe it or not, she also passed the superintendency test. She took them all. She had the big background to do it. I couldn't believe it when I saw all the credentials she got.
First Puerto Rican principal.
Wow.
At Coward.
And then she worked out at Coward, and she worked for a principal before she became the principal. She was running the school. And I told, because the guy had gone to college with me, and his wife, I don't know if you recall Dr. Pruneda, who used to work with Santillo.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? Yeah. And so they were married, but the guy, he was never at school, man. And, you know, I always feared for her that something could happen and he's not there. You know, these kinds of things that go in your mind when you see something's wrong. But thank goodness the guy retired, went elsewhere, and they were ready to find a principal there. And I told Dr. Steve Flores, you know, Steve, Marta has been running the school for 8 years. She deserves this school. She knows the parents. She has really helped the school. Sure enough, she was finally placed there, and I was so happy to see her. Because she deserved. She earned it.
She got a shot. No, that's great. That's beautiful. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the one thing, as Hector's talking and Renee and Peter, the one thing that we've got to remember that change does not happen just because.
That's right.
There has to be a push from without the system and within the system.
Of course.
And so the remarkable change that has taken place in the Dallas Independent School District from a segregated system where children of color were treated less than to the district that it is today that has wonderful, wonderful programs.
That's right.
It does take the push from without and within. I can remember the Black Coalition to Maximize Education. Renee was one of those that was pushing within out.
Yeah.
And I and several others would meet with them, and I would help them to write their letters to Superintendent Nolan Estes. And Dr. Estes would get the letters, and he'd walk around to our office. I was working with Yvonne Ewell then. And he said, I got this letter. I need y'all to help me to respond. So I was writing the letter to the superintendent. And Ms. Ewell would say, well, you know, Shirley's a good writer. Take a look at this and write a response to them. And I said, well, Dr. Estes, give me your 5 points, and I will write them in. And he said, well, I think so-and-so. What do you think? I said, well, I think these are the 5 points that you might want to consider putting in.
It's good trouble.
Yes, good trouble.
So Shirley,
So you have to be within and
Yeah.
without the system to make the
right.
system change. As I look at the children today who are walking out of schools, but it was during the civil rights movement that it was us young folks. I was one of those. I got my badge because I was arrested when I was in the 8th grade on the front page of the paper. So we've got to support these children. They have to understand there are consequences to your actions.
That's right.
But for that which is right and just, You got to have these and build these leaders for tomorrow.
It's worth it. And I think that's a great segue to Reverend Johnson.
But I was listening to this marvelous history that I know very little about, sitting here wondering, well, I have no history with the Dallas Independent School District. Why am I here? I mean, other than the fact the school is named for John Lewis. John Lewis and I became friends August 28, 1963, at the feet of Abraham Lincoln. That's the day Martin King told us about his dream. John and I were young men. And the police department was telling us how many people was on the mall, but you couldn't see it. So we climbed up in a tree. And we could look across that mall and see that magnificent picture of America. Blacks, whites, Hispanics, Asians, a picture of America. In 1969, Martin King is in his grave. I sat in a meeting at Ebenezer Church in Atlanta. It was one of the meetings that everybody had to be at the meeting, and the way they would do this, they'd say, if you want to pick up your check, have your butt in the meeting. So if your check is going to be at Ebenezer, if you're not at the Ebenezer, the check going back to the office.
That's right.
So all of us at Ebenezer for this meeting, me and the young men, John Lewis and Julian Bond and Jesse Jackson, Eddie Osborne and Bernard Lee, we sitting at the very back of the church, cutting up and clowning and telling jokes and not paying no attention to what's going on up in the pulpit. This is 1969, and I heard two things from the pulpit. One was my name and Dallas, Texas in the same sentence. Put my hand up. And the young said, boy, put your hand down, you're going to Dallas. I didn't volunteer to come here, I was drafted.
Number one draft choice.
The reason I was sent to Dallas in 1969, now Martin King is in his grave, and the civil rights movement we're on the verge of bankruptcy. Dr. King was the fundraiser for the civil rights movement. For the whole, not just at SCLC, but for SNCC, for the NAACP, for the Urban League, Martin King was the fundraiser. And we are literally facing bankruptcy. The decision to send me to Dallas had nothing to do with the Negro leaders here, the preachers here, or the racism here. It was one reason and one reason alone. Love Field was the best airport in the Southwest. My responsibility was the 5 Southwestern states: Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and
Oklahoma.
The 5 Southwestern states. I was supposed to stay in a hotel in downtown Dallas, do my organizing all over, because we were planning for the premiere showing of the movie on King's life. It was going to premiere in 800 cities around the world. I had the 5 Southwestern states. And the idea was to raise enough money for Coretta, Mrs. King, not to have to beg to raise Martin's children. When Dr. King died, he didn't have no money, no life insurance. Nobody was selling life insurance.
Wow.
He had tried and tried and tried to get life insurance, but nobody was selling it to him. And people say, well, he had that big old rich church in Atlanta. That wasn't his church, that was his daddy's church. So when Dr. King died, our challenge was to figure out a way how to help Coretta raise his children without having to beg. Harry Belafonte, Sidney Poitier, Samuel Livingston, and there was somebody else, came to us with an idea. And the idea was, if you all work with us, we can develop a documentary on Martin's life. And it can premiere in 800 cities around the world. And it had this big map with little red buttons in all of the places around the world where they was going to send staff. And I'm looking at that map thinking, the Virgin Islands, that's where I need to go. Put my hand up again. And the young said, put your hand down, boy. We can tell you, you're going to Dallas. Whether you like it or not, you're going to Dallas. Came here in 1969 strictly for the premiere showing of King's movie. I had the 5 Southwestern states. My orders was, don't get involved in nothing in Dallas. this is my orders. Don't start no stuff in Dallas. There was a hotel in downtown Dallas owned by the World Council of Churches. Everywhere there was those hotels, we could stay there and pay taxes on the room. Didn't have to pay for the room.
Okay.
That's where I was supposed to stay. Don't get into nothing involved in Dallas.
Don't get the preachers mad at you.
No, don't start no mess in Dallas. Just stay out of, don't start no trouble. I'd been here 3 days. Somebody knocked on my door in my hotel one night. Go to my door, because I didn't know nobody here.
Lip.
I didn't, yeah, Albert Lipscomb, that's his, Albert Lipscomb, J.B. Jackson, Elsa Faye Higgins, Mr. Gideon Johnson was his name. And I opened up my door, and these people standing there. And they telling me about something called Fair Park. And that the city is taking their homes. And I listened to them at the door, didn't even let them in my room because I didn't know them. And I listened to them, and Mr. Gideon Johnson was weeping. And he told me he was a GI, had fought in maybe World War II at the Korean War. And he had bought that house for his family on the GI Bill. And he said, they're taking my home. And this man was weeping. And I'm thinking, and they're gonna fire me if I give all this. I listened to them and decided that I would visit the Fair Park and tour it with Albert Lipscomb and J.B. Jackson and Ms. Higgins and Mr. Johnson. And we toured, 3 days later, I toured the Fair Park, going door to door to door. And everybody I talked to loved their little wood frame homes, told me how long they had been there. Their children had grown up in this. It wasn't houses, this were people's homes. And the city was taking their homes. And I'm trying to figure out how can we help these people, because if I get involved in anything, Andy's gonna fire me.
You talking about Andrew Young?
Andy was my boss at that time. But I knew we had lawyers that could help. But how can I convince SCLC to get involved in Texas and in Dallas? They had no commitment at all to this part of the country. They didn't even consider this the South. This was the West. And the argument was the civil rights movement is in the South. Texas is a part of the West.
Frank Hernandez was one of the only lawyers, civil rights lawyers, to get involved with SCLC.
Big help to us at that time.
He was the only one when Ernie McMillan had the demonstration. He defended Ernie McMillan. Frank went to A&M, went to SMU Law. A lot of Mexican Americans in the community. He was my mentor. Didn't like him because he was aligning himself also with African Americans. And so we took heat. I took a lot of heat for having friends that were African Americans. But Frank stood out and defended Ernie McMillan in court. And so there was very few of us. Let me tell a story about Al Lipscomb, because that's another icon that a lot of people don't know. We know that there's a street named after Al. One night, it was in 1971, 72, Al, myself, and Reverend Zan Holmes, who was my pastor, Shirley's pastor, we were driving to Fort Worth to go talk about block partnership. Block partnership was this concept between the Council of Churches and African American churches. It was a partnership. And African American churches were adopted by United Methodist or whatever, and they do some wonderful things. So they invited us to go to Fort Worth. So we were driving to Fort Worth, the three of us, and I was making some comments as I was driving. And Al Lip, we used to call him Lip, he said, "That's an excellent point. Excellent." And I was driving, I almost crashed. I said, "Lip, what did you do before you got involved in civil rights?" He said, "I was the best boot-licking waiter in Dallas." And I said, "Where?" He said, "You name it. The Adolphus, the Baker, La Tunisia Hotel, La Tunisia restaurant over there by Exchange Park." I said, "La Tunisia? I used to work there. I was a busboy." "What station were you on?" He says, "I was the front station." I said, "Lip, I was your busboy. I worked with you in the late 50s. He says, how did you know that? He said, because what did the maitre d' tell us about when somebody asked about an item in the menu? He said, we'd say, that's an excellent choice, excellent choice.
Oh man, so that's that. You keep going with your story because I want to hear how that landed. That's funny.
They explained to me that the mayor's name was Eric Johnson, and the city attorney was Alex Bickley. They explained to me, that Fair Park homeowners, that the mayor and the city leaders wouldn't even meet with them, wouldn't even talk to them.
That's right.
And I said, well, you know, you don't ask white leaders to meet with you. You make them meet with you. And if you don't mind, I'll make the mayor meet with you. I knew that the Dallas Cotton Bowl Parade was coming, and they couldn't cancel it. There used to be something, I don't know if this still exists, called milligrams instead of telegrams. Real cheap to send. So I sent milligrams to all of my friends all over America, my partners, blacks, whites, say, hey, come to Dallas and go to jail with me on New Year's Day. And they poured into Dallas with their long hair, a bunch of hippies from the anti-war movement. I probably had 300 or 400 of them here, sleeping on church floors. Mount Olive church floor, Warren United Methodist church floor. That's what, because we didn't have no money. Yeah. But they poured into Dallas. So we sent, the day before New Year's, we sent Mayor Eric Johnson a telegram. If you don't meet with the Fair Park homeowners, I'm gonna block the Cotton Bowl Parade. And I had my soldiers here to get it done. Yeah. I mean, real civil rights people who would bleed and go to jail, and the kind of nonviolent soldiers that I had worked with all over the South. Yeah. I don't know who told Eric Johnson that he needed to meet. He came to Warren United Methodist Church on New Year's Eve and said, I am willing to meet with the homeowners. And we're going to send limousines to get them. I said, no, I'll get them down there. And the way I got them down there, there was a black cab company here, owned by Mr. Randall. And Mr. Randall said, well, Peter, I'll send cabs and take them downtown. Yeah. And I said, I went with him, and I said, now listen, look that white man in his eyes. Don't look at your shoes. Don't smile. Don't laugh. Look him in his damn eyes. And tell him about your homes the way you told me about your homes, not your houses, but your homes where you raise your children, where you use the GI Bill to pay for your home. And we met with Eric Johnson. I just sat and watched. Yeah. And Albert Lipscomb became a man that night, looking that white man right in his eyes and telling him about Fair Park community and the schools and the people that had grown up in that community.
Mr. Johnson, Reverend Johnson, this is why I asked you to join this conversation. And it goes back to something that Ms. Newsom just said. It took inside and outside pressure in order for us to move forward. The conversation that we're having here tonight, and we're gonna wrap up because man, I could keep going for a very long time. And I am so grateful that y'all have blessed us tonight. The conversation that we're having tonight, that we had tonight, is one that I wanted us to have because we needed to add some color to the black and white images, the history books, the list of dates. And I want to kind of, reveal the point that I alluded to a little bit earlier. We said desegregation. Dallas ISD got out of the desegregation order by Judge Sanders, and that was in 2003. Yeah. 2003. A lot of folks think that, this is old history, ancient history. These people lived it. Many of you out there lived it. We are not that far removed from a time where we had to fight to be able to go to Fair Park, fight to be able to have an overinvestment, which was needed, of resources invested in our learning centers, fight to make sure that you put miles on your car And I don't know if they were doing frequent flyer miles back in the day, but you helped bring people one by one, touching their hands, shaking their hands, saying, come to Dallas ISD. You know, we mentioned Santos Rodriguez. Renee was walking the front lines when that man was murdered. Like, we are not that far removed. But look where we are today. This building is an $80 million investment from the bond that Dallas ISD passed not too long ago. We now have some of the best schools, facilities-wise, not just only in this city, but in this country. That didn't come simply because time just kept passing. People had to make it happen. What were you about to say,
I was
Reverend?
going to say that since the school is named for my friend John Lewis, John and I became friends in 1963 and remained friends up until his death. When I came to Dallas, John Lewis and Julian Bond had something called VEP, Voter Education Project, funded by Rodney Rockefeller. Every spring, John Lewis and Julian would come to Dallas. You know what they would bring me? A check. The check, I would use it to hire students from South Dallas, West Dallas, East Dallas, Oak Cliff. We would hire students. And each student would get paid at the end of every week. And at the end of the summer, the students was doing something simple, voter registration, going door to door, door to door, door to door, seeing if you're not registered, we're going to get you registered to vote. At the end of the summer, there was a black club on and restaurant on, we call him Stepper. I don't remember Stepper's name.
Yeah, that was good enough.
He was a gangster in the truest sense of the word, loved him. At the end of the summer, Stepper would give a party for my students.
Yeah.
These were Bishop College students, high school students from all over Black Dallas. And we'd have this big party at Stepper's place. He would feed them and they would dance, and it was a good party. And I would have an envelope that they didn't know they were going to get because they'd been paid every week. But at the end of the summer, when the party was over, I would call each one of them up and give them an envelope with their name on it. And that envelope would have $5 and $100 bills in it. And some of those kids had never seen a $100 bill. And the jumping up and down and the clapping and the screaming is paid for me.
Yeah.
The memories of, and every now and then I'll run into one of those young people. And they say, "I'm just, do you remember me? I was doing voter registration and y'all give me that." And Dallas changed because of teaching people how to register and vote.
And it was young people on the front lines.
Yeah, it was kids.
And y'all helped
Yeah.
spur that. I'm so inspired by these stories. We were gonna do some questions from the audience. We're gonna allow y'all we're gonna close up, and then if anybody wants to ask a couple of questions and hang around for a little bit, we'll allow that to happen. But I wanna close with this. When we think about the long arc, in Dallas ISD, from 1954 all the way to 2003, that was a long time. There were hundreds of children who went through here, thousands of families. And we think about how far we've come in that period of time, and we look at what we still have left to do. The lessons that we got from the work that you all did, I'd love for you to close us out with, if you were summing up the advice that you would be giving to a young person today, the young person who might be going through school right now, they're in high school, they're looking at the world around us, they're looking at how things are changing, they're looking at some of the erosion of some of the things that we fought to establish in that period of time. What would be, briefly, the advice that you would give to young people today?
Well, for me, knowledge, information is a weapon. Knowledge can protect you from everything. Knowledge protects you from first making ignorant, dumb decisions. Yeah. The way to save our children, every Friday there's a bus leaving this city, leave the Dallas County Jail, going to the penitentiary, full of little black boys. This is every Friday. Yeah. And they're in the criminal justice system for the rest of their life. Even when they get out of the penitentiary, they're still in the criminal justice system. If we can reduce the numbers on that bus, we'll make Jesus smile.
That's beautiful. Ms. Newsom.
Yeah, for me, it's twofold. I think that every child needs to have an adult advocate. And I think that we as a community have a responsibility, whether we are working in schools or not, to take 1 or 2 children under our wing
Yeah.
and lead them down the path that they should go. Kids want to do, they just don't know to do. And so it's us, we the adults, who have to help them to do. The other thing I would say to our young people, when Lincoln High School, we went to Swaziland, which is the last kingdom on the continent of Africa. They have a sitting king, it's the last kingdom. We partnered with a school there. And when we went to visit, we took 3 students with us, 1 teacher, Earl Jones, and myself. And the kids even said, Ms. Newsom, can you arrange for all the other children to come? Because if they can see how blessed we are, then they do better. We have to help our kids to understand how blessed they truly are. When you look at the rest of the world and what kids are not getting, and they take for granted, but we allow them to take it for granted, and we've got to stop that and help them to see the blessings that God has put in their lives and that they are blessed to be a blessing to others. You got to do better so that you can help somebody else do better. That's what I would say.
Every blessing is an assignment.
Yes.
Renee.
19 years ago, I was privileged to be working with a school district, and Dr. Hinojosa sent me out 2007 to deal with the kids that were walking out of schools. Ironically, same situation, but a different administration, same circumstances, different governor, different administration. And 3,000 kids walked out from all over the city, downtown Dallas. And it was my job with security and administrators to get them back to their schools safely, securely in the buses. And as I was doing that, a group of young ladies from Irma Rangel came up to me. They knew who I was, and they looked at me, and they were juniors, sophomores, and they said, Mr. Martinez, we walked out, now what are you going to do? And so I said, that's a good question. So I called my compadre Hector and I said, compadre, we've been challenged. We've been challenged. So Hector and I met a few weeks later with a group of those students. And what resulted in was the mega march of 2007, where we had 600,000 people march in Dallas, the largest march in the country at that time. But kids will challenge you. They will challenge you. Yeah, as they should.
It always starts with young people.
Yeah.
They're the ones that create the challenge, and you have to respond to that challenge. We were already, I guess, monitoring the bill by this congressman in Milwaukee, Sensenbrenner, that actually he had entered a bill that would criminalize anybody that was here without any documents. And with Hispanics, you have some that have been here 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, but they're not citizens, and they function. They're not being criminal. They've got their own businesses, many of them. They're putting their kids through school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we decided we got to do something. And there were 2 senators that told us we had to take to the streets. And that was John McCain and Ted Kennedy.
Wow.
They said, just like John Lewis, you got to make some noise, you got to make some trouble. Good trouble.
Good trouble, baby.
And sure enough, we took it. I went to 3 marches. I went to the one in Chicago. I went to the one in LA. They had significant people, but not like Dallas, Texas.
600,000.
Oh, they were all smaller. And the impact that it had on Congress, too. To knock out something like that. I was going to say also that when I first moved to Dallas, and we lived at Lake Highlands for a while, and my oldest son was in the 1st grade, and he was the only Hispanic there, I told my wife, this ain't going to fly. We're going to find us a spot. So the Mexican food was in Oak Cliff, so we're going to Oak Cliff, right? So the lady at Judge Fight, the real estate person, she takes us a real nice property that we like by the Oak Cliff Country Club. And so we're there. I said, man, this is it. Because all my friends, they all wanted to go to Plano and Frisco and all that. So we're not going to do that, man. We want this inner city. And the lady says, Mr. and Mrs. Flores, I just want you to know that blacks are moving into this neighborhood. I said, oh, yeah? Well, there's some Mexicans going to be moving in. And we said, what, don't they pay their mortgage or what? What we wanted to know. Because in San Antonio, Truman passed a law for the military that could never deny you a right to buy where you want to or rent where you want to. This is 1948, man. I mean, I said, man, Dallas is about 20 years behind the times here. But this is the kind of Dallas that was here. Yeah. I just couldn't believe it. I don't know. I was used to a different, with the military. My dad was in the military 35 years. It's a different mindset. I just couldn't believe how backwards Dallas was at the time. But then I've learned that they caught up quickly.
That's right.
Byron, we would be negligent if we did not mention some icons in our community that I know everybody knows, but a lot of people that will watch this will not even know who they were. Many of them were trustees. They were Anglo, they were Jewish. Jan Bromberg, fantastic woman. Dr. Marvin Berkeley, Dr. Dan Foster from the medical school.
Yeah.
Levi Olin from Temple.
Yeah.
These were icons that were our allies that we would turn to and say, we need your help, we need your vote on the school board, but more than that, we need your support. And a lot of young people have not heard of these names.
Annette Strauss and her husband,
Annette Strauss
Bob
and her
Strauss.
husband.
I could have never gone to Leadership Dallas because I couldn't afford it. $2,000. She has a reception at her house, says, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it.
Yeah.
Renee reminds me, one other thing that I would want people to remember is that Dallas used to elect its board members, citywide.
Yeah.
When single-member district came in,
Yes.
that's when you had equal representation
Yep.
of blacks, browns, and whites.
One vote, one person, one vote.
One person, one vote. And it has made a difference in how the school district responded to the children of color.
That's a great point.
So we thank you all.
That's a really good
Let me
point.
just say one thing about John Lewis and regarding this generation of our children. John Lewis was deeply committed to something called nonviolence. John was beaten more than once, never fought back. Our children is shooting at each other.
Yeah.
We have got to talk to our children about the violence against each other.
Yeah.
And we must not ignore this problem in all of our communities today.
Exactly, exactly.
On that note, thank you all so much. Let's hear it for this panel. Living history. Living history. Thanks again to Next Generation Action Network. Thanks again to Principal Monique Page. She was here a little bit earlier for opening up this beautiful facility. And shout out to everybody. We're going to keep it rolling for the Social Justice Week. All right?
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you recognizing John Lewis, man.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thank y'all. So,